Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course that makes this episode 17 of Circles and Squares, and it's the first episode we've done as a normal episode, that I guess, with our PS5. So this will be the episode full of all the PS5 games we've been playing. Kate, how's your weekend been with your new system?
Well, I can tell you I am extremely happy that my console came on time, and I didn't have to wait till the Monday like I was warned I might have to. So it has been phenomenal.
You were delivered on the day of, right? And I was the day just after that.
Yeah, that's right. I got day of, but closer to the end of the day. So I had it for an extra evening, I think, than you did.
Yeah, so just for those of you finding us for the first time here, we actually did release an episode back on the spooky day, Friday the 13th, after having the console for more or less 24 hours, just kind of getting our initial impressions, what we thought of the controller, the UI, the hardware itself, everything like that, so you can check that episode out as well. But Kate, just to build on any opinions you had, did you have any further thoughts just on the console itself before we talk about the games to add to that?
Yeah, and I think it'll come up as well when I speak in my game, so I won't say too much now. But I think the one thing I thought of after recording is I wish I had given a little more emphasis to the speaker on the controller, because I think it has added such a neat, like, subtle addition to the games I've been playing, even though it's not necessarily a new feature.
Especially I've noticed too, like, that's one of the big drawbacks of using my headset, because I got the 3D Pulse headset, and as much as I love the surround sound, it also takes away kind of that aspect of the controller speaker, because it doesn't work when you're using the headset.
Oh, okay. Is it that it physically doesn't actually produce sound, or you just can't hear it because you've got headphones on?
You know what? That's a good question, and I don't actually know, but I can't hear it either way.
Right.
So I mean, the headset's really nice and good to play with. An update to everyone too that heard the previous episode, where I was saying I was having an issue with my headset. It hasn't actually disconnected from the PS5 at all.
Oh, okay.
It's only had that.
So you only had that
when
issue with
the
PS4. Interesting. Well, I guess maybe.
Yeah, weird, right?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. My preferred problem-solving method is like, well, maybe it'll just fix itself. It's probably fine. And hey, maybe you've crossed that bridge and now it's fine.
God, I hope so. One thing I wanted to mention to you actually that I hadn't about the PS5 also, just before we talk about anything else, is I don't know how much you've looked into like your trophy and your friends list kind of stuff, but I find that stuff so much more difficult to access with the menu right now. Getting to just the tab where you can see like which friends are online, who's playing what. I don't know if I'm maybe going about it the wrong way, but just the little community menu at the bottom, it always shows me all these parties and groups instead of my friends first, and I find that really frustrating. And there's also, as far as I can tell, no good way to go look at all your trophies without clicking it like deep into your personal profile.
Yeah, that is the one thing that I've noticed, because when you first turn on your PS4, that's kind of like the first thing you see is that sort of like activity bar, where it's like, oh, James has been playing like Miles Morales, like spoilers for later in the episode, and like, you know, he got this trophy, and like, that's great. But like, yeah, now it just kind of like boots up into your menu, where it's like my games I've been playing are like those, so like it's clean and nice in that way, but I guess like you actually have to go like looking for those friends tabs and stuff. So
yeah, it's just weird, I guess, with the trophies specifically, because they just made a big deal about changing out the trophy system and, you know, updating it, making it, you know, expanded levels and all that kind of thing. So it seemed to me like they were maybe going to put more emphasis on that, and now it seems like harder and trickier to use.
Yeah,
but
it's possible
maybe
like
that's
more.
Just me. Maybe I'm missing something.
Possible more of that stuff will come later, and they'll kind of just like add features as we go and kind of change it a little bit. Like, to be fair, I haven't really done too much. I transferred my data over from PS4, so I have all my trophies and stuff. But like, I haven't really been.
How did that go, by the way?
I did it overnight because it was like 7 hours or something ridiculous, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna not play my PlayStation for 7 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, that's ridiculous.
It was easy though, no glitches?
Yeah, it went totally fine. It did say, no, it was weird, and maybe I'm second guessing myself and thinking that like maybe I read it wrong, but I could have sworn that when I went to do it, it was like, you can still play, it told you can still play games while this is going in the background, but I couldn't. Like, when it was going, and I ended up canceling it and then doing it overnight, because when I tried it the first time, it was running and like downloading in the background, and then when I went to play a game, the game wouldn't open. It just like,
wow, really?
It was
sucks.
really weird. Like, I clicked on it on like Demon Souls, and then it like did like the kind of like played the music and kind of did that like zoom in when it is opening the game, and then it just got stuck and it didn't open. And so I thought that was weird.
Damn.
And so I tried Astrobot to see if it was Demon Souls for some reason, and Astrobot had the same problem. So I just ended up canceling the download, and then my games worked fine and did the transfer overnight.
Really
so
weird.
so now I'm
Wow.
second guessing myself and thinking like, well, maybe I misread it and it actually said you cannot play games while this is going, but I don't know. I was pretty confident, but like I don't know. It's been a weird last few days. Maybe I fucked up.
Weird.
Who knows? But yeah, my advice is do it overnight because it's kind of slow.
Fair enough. Well, hey, why don't we get into the show here today? Just before we talk about the games we're playing here, I just want to remind everyone, check us out on our Twitter for the link for everywhere you want to listen to us. So we have a link tree over there at CANDS Pod, and you can find us YouTube, social media, platform services of your choice. So just go check us out there. Much appreciated. But today we're going to be talking about the games we've been playing on the PlayStation 5. So that will include Miles Morales, Demon Souls, and Astrobot's Playroom, and as well we also will be talking about the PlayStation Plus games for the month, which we've done Hollow Knight and Shadow of War for they were PS4 games back on the last episode, so we'll talk about those as well. And then after the break, we're only doing a 2-segment show today because we did do the PlayStation 5 special a couple days ago. So we'll be going over our PlayStation 5 predictions back from, I think it was May, right, on episode 4?
Yeah, it was episode 4. It was back in May. May 13th, actually, the episode came out.
Wow. So back at the very beginning of the podcast, we made some predictions about the PS5 release, and so we will be reviewing those and seeing how we did. But until we get that far in the show, Kate, let me tell you a little bit about a game called Spider-Man Miles Morales. So Spider-Man 2018 was one of the, I'd say it's one of my top games on the PS4. I don't think it was like a revolutionary kind of game, it was very much like a really high-end game, very fun to play. The movement was like, everyone pretty much agrees, some of the best movement ever in a video game.
Yeah,
so,
really, I hear it really made you feel like Spider-Man.
Oh, hell yeah. So this game obviously like very anticipated for me and many other people, and I've got to say so far I've tried to cram in as much as I could over the last few days, and I think I'm reasonably far into it. I've been playing, kind of toying around with if I've liked the fidelity or the performance mode first, because it's a beautiful looking game. Like it's, the first huge AAA title I've played on my PS5. So obviously I'm going to be pretty impressed with it. And I really am. It's interesting to play it in 60 frames per second on the performance mode versus the higher graphical and on the fidelity. And I think I've settled on playing on performance mode just because with all the fluid action and swinging around and all just the moves that Miles pulls off, it's just really neat to have that higher frame rate.
Right.
And that's been like an absolute joy to experience. I know the PC people, you all already have it all the time, but for us, like, it's really cool to see
this is a nice
on PlayStation.
novelty,
and, it's awesome, yeah. But the game, like, yeah, I mean, speaking just the graphically, like, you can see the city, so I guess it's got a little, like a further draw distance and all that, and the graphics are just a step up from what was on the 2018 version. It is the same map as the game before, so not that I've memorized it or like know all the big,
but it's
I don't know
familiar
the
to
city
you.
like the back of my hand, but it's familiar. And there's still the Avengers building, and there's a couple other, there's the big prison on the water. I forget what that's called now, but it's like Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of stuff. Not Alcatraz. But yeah, it's just cool to be back in that world, and it has such a cool style this time too, with the new soundtrack, and it's almost like an R&B soundtrack but mixed with that kind of superhero type music, if with like the horn and feeling like very triumphant, and it's a really cool mix. And I'm not really a big R&B fan, but this soundtrack for me is like, hey, this is really cool. It totally fits the mood of
you might be now,
like Miles
yeah.
and the characters, and yeah,
that's cool.
It's really
it's
music
kind of like
based.
how Spider-Verse had a really unique and interesting soundtrack, but it fit really well for that too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say this is better than Spider-Verse in terms of that, but it is very much like along the same lines as that as well. So I mentioned too, like, it has the same base map and the same base game. So I mean, it is very similar in a lot of ways to Spider-Man 2018. Like, Miles does fight differently and have different moves and abilities, and I'll talk about them as well. But I mean, it is still very much like swinging around the city, climbing the buildings. You finding collectibles everywhere. There are different collectibles now. Like Miles has this friend in the game. Her name's Finn, and they collect time capsules together. So you're going around finding these memories from Miles' past, or you're looking up finding loot caches from the new enemy faction, which is in the game. Just different collectibles than Peter would have found, but the same kind of idea, like searching around for them and all that kind of stuff. But it's not so much the map itself that's different. It's just the way you can get around, like the speed with which you can swing through the city, and the fast traveling, Kate. Oh my God, the fast traveling. You literally can click a train station on the map. So in the previous game, you'd have to actually go down to the subway, get on the train. There'd be this animation, Peter's like riding the subway, and they were actually pretty cool. He's like in his Spiderman suit,
right?
Sitting on reading a newspaper or something. And in this game, I was expecting like, you've heard a lot about the load times, whatever, but you go down, you click a train station, and then literally the screen goes black, and you just appear where you want it to go.
Oh, okay. Wow, it's that quick, huh?
It's very cool.
That's awesome.
Very cool. But yeah, and so that's pretty impressive. And just the traversal too, like I said, swinging is pretty similar between Pete and Miles. But the cool part about Miles is that he has these new abilities called Venom abilities, which is part of his character and all that. But it lets you do different things in traversal and in combat as well with the same moves. So he's got this one move which is like a Venom jump, and so you can do it on top of an enemy, and it kind of breaks their armor or stuns them. But you can also do it as you're just swinging around the city, and so you'll be swinging, build up a lot of speed, get up really high, and then you can do a Venom jump it's almost like a double jump you'd have in a platformer, and it can just add that extra element of speed even if there's no building around to it, attach yourself to. And so the combos you can end up coming up with just getting around are even more cool than the previous game.
That's cool. I'm glad to hear that there's some new stuff that's been integrated for like the movement as well, because obviously like you expect there to be different like combat stuff with a different character and like those kind of changes, but I don't know if I necessarily expected like a lot of like out of combat and like movement style additions as well. But that sounds really cool, because it seems like that's a big part of like what the draw to play the game is like that map traversal and whatnot.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially since, it is a shorter experience. And so like I know the mainline quests are going to be lessened, but just with all the collectibles, I'm so down. Like I'm planning to probably go around and try and get them all again, just because of the movement. And it's just an excuse to spend more time in a game that is otherwise smaller, because I would say that's one of my downfalls of the game so far, is I feel like I'm really enjoying the story and the cast of these characters. Like they're really believable. They feel really personable on in a way where they're even more so than Peter Parker. Because even though he's like a relatable guy, he's still the guy we know as Spider-Man way more, ubiquitously. And so even now you feel even more vulnerable playing as Miles. And I feel like even Miles himself in his dialogue, he's very scared to be like, oh, I hope I do this right.
So this game's maybe a little bit more intimate in some ways.
Definitely, yeah, and it, like I said, the cast is really likable. Like there's Miles and some family members. He has this new friend. So far, I think my favorite character that I've met, his name's Genki. He's very much like Ned, in the Spider-Man movies. He's like the guy in the chair, the assistant. But he's way more in on like Miles. He's known from the very start of the game. Miles is got these powers, and so they're working together, kind of in more of a team fashion. And so it's cool their collaboration. And I just wish that the game was almost, I know that this is meant to be like the Uncharted Lost Legacy comparison, like shorter game while they work on the sequel, but I'm kind of upset with like the pace that the story is moving at, because I feel like I'd love it to slow down and spend more time with these characters instead of kind of speeding through. It's very rapid fire, this game. Like you'll have a story moment, then you'll be right into some action, and then he'll say, I've got some free time, but you're really just escalating quite quickly through the story in a way that it didn't in the first game. And so like I'm enjoying it, but I hope it stays its welcome long enough and doesn't feel too rushed, because right now I'd say it's a little rushed. Right.
Yeah, that's too bad. And I guess also too, just and just out of the game context too, like it's your like first game for the PS5, and so there's that kind of like, you really want to like simmer on it for a while too. So I guess also with that like context that's not necessarily just in game, also out of game, it's like it's a shame that it's kind of a smaller sample size, but
yeah, but like I said, there's still a lot to do. There's a lot to collect, and there's also they do a really good job, as a lot of games do these days, in kind of adding little extra story tidbits in alongside main story. So Peter was also always listening to J. Jonah Jameson's radio show in the 2018 game, and Miles is no different. He actually listens to J. Jonah Jameson's podcast, and then another podcast as well, which is it's cool. And he also listens to this other girl, and I think her name's Danica, and she does a very different podcast, which is very supportive of Spider-Man and all this. And then also she also ends the show every day with like a tip, like, oh, don't forget to dry off your umbrella for the next day, or it's just some like innocuous helpful tip. And whereas Jonah's so hard, and so it's cool to have those podcasts always come on and be telling different stories and interviewing different people. That's some nice world
building.
It totally, yeah, and I think it's something that, along with like Mimir and God of War, Sony's just doing such a good job of having these secondary kind of conversations in their games that kind of flesh the world out, and so I'm really appreciating that. In like this very much mirrors what I thought of those in God of War also. And I'm not going to give any story spoilers, but there's some really cool ways that they introduce certain characters in kind of workaround ways that you wouldn't expect. I'll just leave it at that.
You'll know what that means if you played it.
Just because it's so new, you'll know for sure. It's in terms of like doing some challenges to unlock new abilities for Miles and whatnot. So maybe I'll talk about that later when I beat it, or just to give people a bit more time to finish the game. It's just a couple more small things. I have to talk about the skill tree, which is a lot different in this game also. It's kind of divided into 3 sections. So you have your combat abilities, you have your venom abilities, which are, like the venom jump I mentioned earlier. Miles also has a venom punch, which can, stun enemies as well, and a few other different strikes. And then you have also a stealth tree, which is something that is brand new and like the newest part of the game in terms of gameplay mechanics in comparison to the original, because Miles can actually go invisible in this game and cloak himself completely. So the other game had quite an emphasis on stealth when you're breaking into different, construction sites and bases and strongholds. But this is kind of even more expanded on that, because it adds that element of, even if you screw up and you're about to get seen, or even if you alert the guards and you need to get away, you can actually cloak yourself for a limited time and actually make that happen. And so it kind of gives you a little bit more wiggle room if you fuck up, and and just you can approach things a little bit more leniently, which I'm really appreciating. And also I think I've looked a bit further down the skill tree, and it can go some pretty cool places later on also in terms of like what you can do with it. So I'm really liking I'm feeling very, very much motivated to try and unlock all the abilities. And the suits and everything too. There's gadgets and suits as well. You can summon like holograms to fight along Miles. You can use the web shots just the same. You can plant mines in the ground. It's pretty diverse actually.
That's awesome. And it sounds like they probably all have really cool like cinematic, like abilities too. It's a very like graphically like intense and nice game to look at.
It is for sure, and you do like finishing moves throughout the combat, and it all just syncs together really well. Like the cinematography, especially in the battle scenes, is really cool. The way that you'll be punching and then you kind of do a finisher move, and Miles will do a cool pose and like look at the camera, like he knows he's
it's very self-aware.
It's very self-aware, and they're aware people are going to be screenshotting this and sharing videos. Like I've shared a few as well. Like I've done some kind of cool combos, and I put one on Twitter, and I might share a couple more throughout my playthrough. Depending what I do, but I'm really enjoying the game so far. I just need to say this, Kate, I wish this was what the Avengers game from Crystal Dynamics was that came out earlier in this year, because as much as I know people are having their share of fun with it, and it's maybe not as bad as people were expecting, which is a great thing, but just something so tailor-made to make you feel exactly like this hero, to have an in-depth kind of skill tree and different unlocks and a story kind of tailor-made to that character. Like I would love an Avengers game with this kind of quality put into it, because this is very much like quality, and they go out of their way to add little details and references and little nods to things here and there, which I would love an Avengers game like this one day, because this game is great. Can't wait to keep playing it. And I'll let you guys know more, maybe final thoughts once I beat it, which hopefully will be for next time, because there's no way I'm putting this down. Before I pass it off, I have to say one thing. One other little disappointment is actually how they use the haptic feedback and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. It uses the rumble. The rumble feels fine. There is some tension on the trigger swinging around, but just after, maybe Astro got my hopes up a little bit in terms of how they're going to use it, because Astro, as we'll talk about later on, I'm sure you'll agree, saying like, holy shit, like the controller feels so cool for that game. And I think Spider-Man would have been such a slam dunk to be like, hey, web swinging, like let's take some of the best traversal in games. and make it feel cool. Like that, it's a bit of a miss, unfortunately.
Is it just because it's not really integrated very much, or it just doesn't kind of land?
It's not like it's not integrated. I feel like after seeing how much they can do with it in a game like Astro, I would have thought that a first party studio like Insomniac would have had a bit more motivation to make the web swinging feel a little cooler. And maybe it's like another patch that'll come out in a few months. Maybe it's one of those things where, hey, you know what, the haptics isn't really the most important thing. Let's make sure the game doesn't have any bugs, and we'll patch the haptics in at a later date. I don't know, but to me, I was just expecting something so cool like web swinging to have a bit more oomph behind it. You know, and so that was a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a missed opportunity. I wonder if, because the game also came out for PS4, I wonder if maybe because it wasn't specifically an exclusive for 5 that they didn't put as much like resources and time into it as they could have.
Maybe, but I mean, there's a lot of PS4 games, like they're going back and adding that stuff into God of War, and they're adding it back into The Last of Us Part 2, so I don't see why a PS5 game, like arguably the biggest launch game, wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, but maybe that's something the sequel can expand on a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a weird gripe, but anyway, let's move on. Tell me about Demon's Souls.
Well,
I'm so curious.
I'm having such a good time. It's fantastic. Now, I will say, I didn't play the original Demon's Souls, so this is my first experience with the game.
Yeah, and just to clarify that even further too, Demon's Souls is the only From game you've not played.
Yes.
Is that right?
I have not played Dark Souls 2. But aside from Dark Souls 2 and Demon's Souls, is the only From game I haven't played. And it's really interesting because it's really neat to go back and see kind of like where they started. Because Demon's Souls is like Dark Souls is always one that's touted as like, you know, it was the original masterpiece and like that's what put FromSoft on the board. But Demon's Souls is where it all actually started. And it's incredible to see like how much of that game has just stuck in every release going forwards. Like it does have a different feel to it than Dark Souls, but like it's basically, I feel like nostalgic for having played Dark Souls while I'm playing Demon's Souls. So it's like this weird hybrid of like, it's so familiar and it feels almost nostalgic, but it's a game I've never played before and it is totally new as well. But I'm really enjoying it. I'll start off just because, you know, you brought up the controller, and I'll get over the controller really quickly first before I dive too much into the game. But I am surprised by how much the controller is like enhancing my experience. And like, maybe I'm caught up a little bit on the hype. I think that, you know, kind of maybe might be coloring it slightly, but it is really neat, like to the point where I'm experiencing it, but I'm not always like aware of all of the little details. And then when I realize that it's really neat to like kind of consciously figure out like where all the little sounds and noises are coming from. So the game uses the rumble a lot.
That is cool.
It's in like everything you do. And the speaker on the front of the controller is used all the time as well. And it's really neat. Like, I think my setup works really well for it too. Like, I've got nice speakers on my TV, beside my TV, like 2 nice ones that are giving me all my noise. And then I have the controller. So I'm not playing with headphones. That probably makes a difference to a degree. But there's little noises that happen.
Yeah, right. But then you gain the speaker from the controller, which is a benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And so most of the sound is like, you know, it's kind of like it fills my living room really nicely, but it's coming from my TV coming at me, and then the volume from the speaker sounds like it's coming from me, if that makes sense. So like, and it startled me a few times. There's been a couple times where like, you know, there's tons of like barrels and like crates and stuff that you can walk over and destroy in these games. And that sound when you like break a barrel comes from the controller. So it's like, sometimes I've startled myself being like, oh shit, like what was that? Because like it's made me jump. Because like, it's loud.
Unexpected, right? Especially when you're not,
yeah,
when you're
it's
not
loud and
anticipating.
it's unexpected. It's like coming from me, like as if I actually just like stepped on something and I'm like, oh, what have I done? But like it's very different than if it just being the game. And like when you roll, for an example, and depending on like what armor you're wearing, and you roll and the controller like slightly like vibrates like subtly like through your roll animation, and you can hear like the clinking of your armor coming through the controller.
Holy shit, that's cool.
So, like, there's tons of little, like, details and nuance that, like, they didn't have to put in the game, especially, like, because that this is, like, you know, like a remake. It's not like this is a new game they've built up with having these ideas from the beginning or was part of the design process. Like, this is stuff they've taken an older game and, like, added all these new, like, artistic elements to it. So I'm really impressed because I was not expecting to get so much use out of, like, what might be considered kind of like additional or like gimmicky features.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really like elevated my experience. So I'm having a great time. I'm so immersed.
Nice.
The world, I guess it's a good maybe time to jump into the world of Demon Souls. I expect it to be very much like Dark Souls, and in some ways it is, and in some ways it's quite different. So this game is kind of structured, and I didn't know this going in, but it's structured into kind of like 5 separate areas. So you have your hub world, which is the Nexus, and it's where, like, you know, your NPCs go and you level up, and, you know, you get a blacksmith for armor upgrades and things.
And is it very central in this game too, just like the other Souls, where it always kind of is very easy to access that?
Well, it's kind of more in the Bloodborne style, where it's its own separate place that you warp to.
Yeah.
It's not, unfortunately, like the Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls, which is, you know, so cool because it's in the world and you're constantly like looping back to it, and you're in an area that seems so far away, and then all of a sudden you go through like a little corridor and it's like, holy shit, I'm back in Firelink Shrine.
Yeah.
And like,
those are always some of my favorite
moment.
moments of like those style of games is like, oh
Yeah.
my god, I never would have expected like this would lead me back to this
Yeah,
place.
exactly. And they're so well designed. So this definitely has incredible like level design that kind of like loops in on itself, and it's got great shortcuts, and, you know, it's very much like I can see an item over there in the distance that I don't know how to get there yet, but as you progress through the level, then all of a sudden, like, you know, you find a little secret passage that was obscured behind some like crates you had to break, or, you know, you took a turn or found somewhere to like drop off, and all of a sudden you've made your way there. So it definitely has that kind of like looping nice level design, but the kind of, I don't want to say it's necessarily a bad thing, but where they maybe were limited before that they were able to expand on later is that the archstones are all separate from each other. So you have 5 of them, and you warp to each one individually, and you warp like to your bonfires the same way that you would, you know, get around from like lantern to lantern in Bloodborne, for example. But the archstones are not connected, it doesn't seem. So like their own like 5 areas you go to.
Right, okay.
And so like the level design is great for each one, but like you can't get to somewhere like an area in Archstone 1 by going through Archstone 3. Like they're just totally separate.
So it's a little bit more clunky to move around in terms of like comparing it to a newer Souls game.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it sounds a bit different in practice. It's not too different, just in the sense that like you kind of go through the different areas anyway. Like, you know, you complete like the Undead Burg, and then you go like, now I've completed Blighttown, or like, you know, in Bloodborne it's like I'm at Canehurst Castle and now I'm like in this area. So like,
yeah,
the games are always sectioned into different areas. It's just that like they don't connect in the same way and like have like one massive central map you could look at that technically you could walk from one end to the other. It's just 5 smaller maps that you choose which one you're going to.
Yeah.
So they're really like well designed so far, and they're kind of sectioned, and I try always not to look anything up ahead of time, because, you know, I think that this style of game particularly really benefits from just, you know, experiencing and learning and trying to like figure out the world as you go.
Yeah, and like part of the surprise is finding those things out for yourself too, instead of knowing how to combat each thing right off the bat. You know, it's kind of a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Like that exploration and learning process is, I think, a big part of one of the like of why I love these games so much. Is I feel like I'm truly like exploring a world, and I'm not just like going through the motions or like, you know, like progressing in a game. I'm really like immersed and I'm into it. But I will say I did look it up, just because I found that I was going through one archstone and it was getting like very difficult. And as I found out, it's kind of like sort of like you're supposed to do a little bit in the first one and then a little bit in the second one, and then like go sort of in order. So like their section, like it's not Mario levels where it's like 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, and like 2-2, whatever. It's not like that, but like that's how people refer to them because it's convenient. So it's kind of like all like the first fires and the first boss and all the levels are sort of like at the beginner difficulty, and then the second ones get a little harder, and then the third ones get a little harder. So it kind of encourages you to like bounce back and forth between the levels and environments and not just stay in one for too long at any given time.
Yeah, that sounds like it might be a good thing actually, to just give you a bit more variety and in terms of like the environment or the kind of enemies you're fighting. So maybe that's good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I kind of like it because I've swapped back and forth, and all the environments are pretty unique to one another too. Like there's one that's the sort of like city castle kind of thing that's like the generic, like, you know, where you start out in Dark Souls, and then there's one that's like an underground mine that was neat. Mm-hmm. My personal favorite one is this is the third one. It's a like abandoned prison.
Oh, cool.
It's like a rundown prison, but what's really cool about it is it's almost kind of like Lovecraftian. Like you almost see a little bit of like Bloodborne inspiration.
Oh, wow.
Playing through it, and it's got like mind flayers, like straight ripped out of D&D or something, and they've got like all the Cthulhu tentacles, and they like wiggle as they run at you and like shoot spells and stuff. Like I was really not expecting like that style of fantasy to also be in this game. Mm-hmm. So I'm experiencing a lot of new things, and it's really exciting, but at the same time, there's definitely some areas I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that area is in Dark Souls. Like, oh, I'm in Blighttown. Great. Like, here we go. Like, there's definitely a lot of things that they've kind of like heavily pulled from.
Yeah, right.
But it's not bad, and it's neat too because it lets you kind of like, it's very open for how you want to progress. Like, I haven't hit any kind of roadblock aside from like the game just being difficult, but like if you're good enough, there's nothing stopping you from doing it in any order whatsoever.
Right.
So I've played, and I'm kind of tracking progress by bosses. I've beat 4 bosses, 2 in one stone, and then 2 in different other stones.
Right. Okay.
So like it's kind of neat because like if you're getting stuck, you just go somewhere else and like try to progress in a different way. So it's kind of nice where it's like every person's gonna have a slightly different experience of like what order they did things in, which sort of makes for like a feels like your own kind of unique playthrough as you go.
It would be interesting once you beat it to go through and look at like, hey, what's the recommended route? Just to see like how you did in terms of like difficult routes, or like what if you might have missed something or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it interesting for that kind of water cool experience too, where it's like, oh, I really struggled with this boss because like maybe you did it a little earlier, maybe you hadn't gone somewhere that gave you like a spell or like a weapon that's really useful for fighting them, but someone else did that, in a different order, and they struggled with another boss you found easy. So
yeah, totally.
It's sort of neat to see like each person's going to approach it a little bit different. But yeah, that'll take me, I guess, into just kind of like the core gameplay is the other big thing to talk about. It's if you've played a FromSoft, especially if you've played Dark Souls, and you were like me and Miss Demon Souls, you're going to feel totally at home coming into this one. The combat's basically the exact same, aside from 1 or 2 small things that you can do in the later games that they added on as an extra feature, but like it feels basically the exact same.
Yeah, and are you happy with that, or like did you wish they made some changes?
I am very happy with that.
Yeah.
No, I'm totally happy with it. Like I've got my exact same character build. I'm even trying to find the same weapon I beat Dark Souls with, which will be funny. Because I beat Dark Souls 1 and 3 with the Uchi katana, and so I'm hoping, because it seems like it's just the same weapons they bring in every time and just give them a new fresh coat of paint. So I'm hoping to do the clean sweep and just do the exact same character all the way through again.
I hope you can.
I think so. I mean, like every weapon I've gotten so far, I know exactly what it is because it's in Dark Souls later. So that'll be good. The combat's great. I will say the backstabs are a little bit maybe abusable is the one thing. So I know you played Bloodborne, and Bloodborne was slightly different because you you had to charge up an attack for it.
In the sense that you could hit guys through walls and like, you know, bait them into stupid positions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of that. It wants you to use your environment for sure. But in this game, when you get behind like directly behind an enemy, like not like a boss obviously, but like just a normal enemy, you can, and you attack them, you'll just backstab riposte them, kind of like if you had parried them or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's definitely some times where it's like, okay, this enemy is pretty tough, but if I just kind of circle around them for a second and then they don't know how to deal with it, and I backstab them. So they've kept exactly how the enemies work, and their moves and everything is the exact same as the first game, because they want it to be an authentic experience, which I think is the right call. But you can definitely from time to time see these sort of like older or maybe outdated things that got improved or kind of like readjusted later.
Yeah, well, I guess as the series went on, people learned how to exploit some of its mechanics and some of the way that it goes about its business. So maybe like going back to this and sticking very true to its roots is opened those kind of things up to people that know, like, hey, you can just kind of lap this guy in circles until he can't keep up with you. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, they definitely refined a few things. And there's some janky things in Dark Souls and whatnot, too. Like, the games aren't perfect, but there's definitely, like, a few, like, some cracks in the armor every now and again you see. And for the most part, it's just kind of funny because you're like, oh, whatever, it's stupid. And, like, you know, there's some dumb stuff. But overall, it's really good. My one complaint I have with the game so far, and I think it's just an unfortunate design choice, is I don't like what they've done with the healing items in this one. So you get like basically like a healing, it's like different grasses and leaves that you eat for healing in this one, and they're just a item you pick up or you buy from shops as you go. So you don't get like charges of them like you do in Dark Souls, where every time you die you come back, you got your 5 sips of your Sunny D. It's like the Bloodborne style where it's an item you pick up and you can run out.
Yeah.
If you don't have any. And it was kind of annoying in Bloodborne because if you get stuck, it forces you to go...
You gotta go, like, grind to get some more, basically.
Yeah, you basically just go grind. But I find in this game, the drops are a lot less consistent than the health drops in Bloodborne.
Mm.
And especially, it depends on which area you're in. Like, each area kind of, like, drops specific items. So, like, the first areas gives you a lot of healing stuff. The second environment gives you a lot of like crafting materials. The third one gives you a lot of like status condition stuff. So like it's kind of neat and thematic. It all makes sense like what area you're in. But if you're trying to progress in the second area, you're not really getting any health items, but you're still obviously using them as you go.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's like it must be very easy to run out.
Yeah, and especially later on when you get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you get stuck on a boss or a really hard section. So I think that's just an outdated and like unnecessarily punishing thing, especially for new players who are not familiar. And like, you're going to die a lot. Like, even if you're a really confident player, like these games are not easy. And like, you know, there's new enemies. You don't know how they work and what kind of tactic to use best. And like, you're going to slip up, and that's just supposed to be part of the game. You accept it. That's part of why the game is enjoyable. But it sucks to just feel like, all right, well now I got to take a break and like, I better go farm. So I get the idea is, in theory it's kind of interesting because it's like, okay, my soul's resources, am I going to use them for leveling, or am I going to use them to buy more healing items? And that's like a choice maybe you're supposed to make and like prioritize like how you want to use your resources. But it ends up not being a choice as much as just like, well, I'm out now, so I'm forced to go like take a break and like Google a farming route. So
yeah.
I think I respect that they kept the game the same and authentic, and I like that I'm getting kind of like the genuine experience for it. But I would have liked to just maybe have had that kind of like modernized a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because while I haven't gotten incredibly stuck yet, I think I could see myself needing to farm in the future, and I also feel sorry for those people who are like, you know, it's their first game, they're stuck. Like, it would be very frustrating.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. I think that would happen to me. That would put me off. Like, I can see it happening unless I really fell in love. Like, I got through Bloodborne and it had the same problem, and I did have to grind a lot near the end of that game for some health vials. So, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Though.
Absolutely. But yeah, overall, I think it's great, and we'll do some updates. I'm keeping a boss ledger. So far, the 4 bosses, I've beat 3 on my first try, 1 on my second try.
Hey, not bad.
So I'm feeling pretty good about it. Obviously, the game is hard, so I want to see interesting. We'll do a boss run. We'll keep updated, and then also I want to see where I kind of rank this in terms of difficulty.
Yeah.
So far, I'd say this one I think is actually one of the more difficult games in FromSoft's library, but with the caveat that the bosses are kind of easy.
Okay.
So I think like the bosses are sort of easy in this game, but the levels are a lot harder than they usually are. There's a bit less of like time in between bonfires, and like the runs to bosses are quite long and challenging, and they just like stick a shit ton of enemies at you. It's like, okay, you go down a hallway and like, all right, maybe there's an archer at the end shooting you, but what about 6 archers at the end shooting you?
Have you considered
like,
what happened if there was 8 of these guys?
Right, it's like, okay, you just put some extra guys there, like that's not cool.
Oh god.
It likes that strategy a lot, but overall, yeah, I'm definitely happy with my purchase. And
well, Kate, I think it's time to talk about Astro's Playroom, which is the other game both of us have been playing on the PS5. Holy shit, we've already been talking for like 40 minutes, and we've played. This is our 3rd game. We got 2 more to do after this. So let's chat about Astro's.
All right, rapid fire Astrobot.
Rapid fire. I love this game, Kate. I think it is astoundingly more fun than I was expecting. I thought it was definitely going to be, pretty cool with the motion controls and the haptics, and hey, let's figure out how to make everything feel different when you walk on different surfaces. But I'm really blown away with this game as a whole package. And I don't know how far you've got into the game. I think I've beaten 2 of the 4 areas, and I've kind of fooled around in a 3rd. So I don't know if that's similar to you, or how much have you played?
Okay, I've done 2 areas. I've done the first one that we kind of looked at together, the like beach
Cooling
watery
Springs,
one.
right?
Cooling Springs, and I've done the CPU jungle.
Oh, good, because that's the one I haven't done. I've done the other 2. I've done
wonderful. Okay, awesome.
SSD Highway and the other one. I can't draw the name of right now.
It's almost like we planned it, but we didn't.
Almost. This game, to me, I don't know if you'd agree. I'm sure you do now. Like, this has almost a Nintendo charm of polish, like kind of polish level to it. Just the way that
it does.
It is so jam-packed full of like little references to all the different PlayStation, games and accessories and marketing, and like every single thing about PlayStation is like referenced in this game.
Yes, absolutely. Like, as I go through, I think of Mario Odyssey so much when I play this game. There's been times where like I've tried to do the triple jump with Mario because it's like it's so like it's giving me so much like similar vibes to that kind of a game.
Yeah, and it's just so enjoyable to play because you don't go more than I'd say a minute without finding some sort of collectible or secret, or even if it's just a few coins. There's always the next carrot on the stick, like right there for you.
Yeah, it's just constant like dopamine into dopamine into dopamine. Like, it's great. Like, the game is definitely like gimmicky in the sense that like it came out and was like designed around like showcasing the controller, and then obviously being just kind of like a celebration of like PlayStation, but it's also just super fun and like is a good fun experience in its own right too. Like, I don't think it needs those gimmicks to be enjoyable, but it definitely like is not shying away from being that kind of an experience at the same time.
Yeah, not at all. And I feel like once I beat this game, which might even be like the next couple of days, I feel like my biggest complaint will be that there wasn't more of it, because I know it is very short.
Yes.
Like, it hasn't taken much time. I feel like, maybe it'll be a 5-hour experience at most, like if you want to collect everything. Like, it's pretty short, and so I can't help but think, as we move on to the next couple of years, like they have to be thinking about doing a full experience of one of these games, right? This is huge success.
If they put out like a full title game, because I would say probably 5 hours is about right. Like, it takes maybe like an hour to do each area if you're being kind of thorough, and then like, you wouldn't get everything the first time, so you might want to go back and like find all the collectibles you missed. So it's definitely not a long experience, but if they put out like a full 80 hour, like whatever,
Oh, geez.
however long, like a full-fledged title, like I would consider buying it for sure. Like, it is genuinely like I will want more of it when it's done.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you mentioned Mario Odyssey, and that's obviously like, I guess a comparison you could make. I think like obviously Odyssey is a much more impressive game at this point, but if someone was to tell me right now and say to me, hey, James, in 3 years Sony's going to put out a Astrobot's Playroom 2, and it's going to be, very similar to what Odyssey offers in terms of like quality and platforming challenge and polish and surprises, I would agree. Like I think they've proven that they can do it in a smaller sample size, and I'd love to see what they could do over there with like a full budget to do like a big title.
Awesome. Okay, well, tell me about like kind of the cool and like most exciting parts and what you've kind of learned from the other two areas that I haven't gone to yet. So like, what kind of nuances do they have?
So the one I'm more familiar with actually was the one that I was just actually playing before we got together to record, which is the SSD Highway, I think it's called. It's the red one, and it's built around like this mechanic. Each level has a different mechanic, I guess, like a different suit you can kind of put Astro in. I think it's probably the same as in Rescue Mission, although I'm not as familiar with that. But it's pretty much just like different abilities you get for the level's gimmick. And in this one, you get a slingshot. So it's actually just like a PS5 controller shows up on the ground, kind of like how you break out at the start of the game. And it's got a slingshot on it, so you can you use the motion controls to tilt it around and aim where you want to throw Astro, and then you pull back on the touchpad and slingshot him forward. And as much as it kind of uses the motion controls, and I'm not a huge fan of that. And even on the DualSense, I will say, like, it's not exactly one-to-one. Like, if I'm pointing my controller forward, it's not like perfect, but it's not bad. But the reason I really like it is because of the way you feel, like the tension of you pulling back the slingshot, and it has this certain clickiness, almost like if you were to like move one notch on a ratchet, or like a, you know what I mean, like that, like click click click, like moving a combination lock, and you can feel that so accurately on that thing, and it's so impressive. To me.
That's so cool.
And the other one I thought was really cool. I don't know if you spent any time in the ball. It's kind of like Monkey Ball.
Oh, I remember Monkey Ball. No, I haven't gone to that area
Yeah,
yet.
it's kind of like that, and that one actually is controlled with a touchpad as well. You kind of like push it as if you were pushing a ball along, but just the way it rolls on the different surfaces, like you get to roll it through like sand and mud and on like concrete surfaces as well, and you can totally feel the difference between these. And it's a combination of like the vibration and the sound coming from the speaker, because you can actually feel like this is what it would sound like if there was a plastic ball hitting some pavement in a parking lot or something. And so I'm just continually blown away by the surprise of how these things feel, and I'm sure you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, it's like every time you walk over, like I'm walking on glass, and this little like ting 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 of like his little foot on the glass, and like that sounds really neat. Then you go in snow, and snow feels different than like now you're on sand, and that feels different. The CPU jungle one has like a monkey suit you go into, and you do like some like rock climbing with it. Which is kind of neat. So it kind of almost reminds me of the game. It was not Quap.
Yeah.
But the people who made Quap made like a second game, and it was like climbing.
Oh, Mount Your Friends.
No, it's not Mount Your Friends. It's like the Quap controls, but it was for like rock climbing instead of running.
I'm not familiar, but I can envision
anyway,
what it's like.
It's like a really stupid, weird reference if you played it, because like everyone knows Quap, but yeah, it was like the next game they put out, and it was rock climbing, and I can't help but think of that every time I use the monkey climbing.
But how does it feel?
Stupid.
How does it feel?
But it feels really good. So like you kind of get like the haptic feedback, and you use the like R2 and L2 to like hang on and like grab each little like rock climbing little part that sticks out. I don't know what those are actually called, but like little
rock
like
shelf
things
or
you
whatever
grab.
it is, yeah.
The shelf, yeah. So you use those, and then you use the motion controls to kind of like swing yourself as well. So you'll have to like swing, and then you can go a bit further and grab onto the next bit that you jumped to. So I think it's fine. The motion controls are fine. I think they're by far the kind of like weakest thing that the controller boasts.
Yeah, I would agree.
But at the same time, like I don't expect much from them, in the sense where like I just don't really see them fitting into most games like the other things do. Like, you know, like the haptic feedback can fit into like almost any game in some way. And it's not like obtrusive, but like motion controls is like, I don't want that when I'm playing.
Yeah, I think it's almost one of those things where it's like, well, this is the tech demo. We have to show off everything this controller does. So motion is one of those. We have to do it. It's like the microphone. They have to let us blow into those like fan pinwheel things.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to do that, but they just have to put it in because it's a function of the controller.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sure, there might be like a couple like niche small like party games that maybe it'll be relevant. Like, that's fine. But like, you know, you don't want to show up and like, I don't want to be like Spiderman. It's like, whoa, blow on your controller to make Spiderman move
no,
faster.
there's Doc
Ock.
Ock.
Like, oh god.
Blow him out the window. Like
blow him out the window. Oh no. Aim your webs by tilting your controller. Like,
Jesus Christ.
No thanks. So yeah, it's fine. Like, it's serviceable. It's not great, but it's fine. But the haptic is really cool. I think the one that we played together was the best example of that. The frog, who has like the springy legs, and you kind of like push the triggers down, and it's like compressing a spring, and then it gets released, and off he flies. So
it really is the kind of thing that I would encourage everyone who, you know, to try out a PS5 somehow. Like you can't really describe it. At least I've never felt anything very similar. And it's not like it's like, oh my god, you know, this is the next thing. I'll never play a different video game again. But it definitely adds something beyond like being a weird gimmick, I would say. Yeah,
it's definitely impressive. Like, it's really neat. Like, if you have no expectations, you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. As I think a lot of people are of the opinion that, like, yeah, but whatever, who cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And, like, you're right. It's, like, it's not a reason necessarily, like, buy the console if you weren't wanting one anyway. But it is a really cool thing that I think the time and resources they've put into it are paying off, and they are worthwhile.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm loving Astro. I'm gonna beat it for next time, and I probably won't talk about it again. I mean, what are you gonna really add to what we've had to say, I guess? But maybe if there's another cool experience, we'll bring it up. But I'm really enjoying it.
The one other thing I will say just before we move on from Astro is I don't know if you did, but in any of your levels, but I got a bow.
No, I didn't. Level. But there was a gun I got to use in mine.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly, yeah.
Did it have the like feedback from shooting, like a recoil?
Yeah, it did.
Nice.
Yeah,
I've seen some videos of like Call of Duty and like people like taking a video of like their controller and like seeing how it's kind of like bouncing up against their finger as they're shooting.
Yeah, I'd love to try that. I mean, I'm not gonna get Call of Duty, but I'm hoping like it'll get put into Apex pretty soon or whatever shooter I end up playing next, because there will be one for sure.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Yeah. But yeah, I was excited. I'll say just quickly that I was hoping there would be a bow, because when the haptic came out, like the bow is always the example. Like, it's the bowstring, and it like gets tighter as you pull it. And so I was like, there's got to be one in Astro. I want to test it out. It is really neat.
Nice.
It really does get like more difficult as you go. And I think like on a game that, I mean, the bow is just a tiny part of that game, but I could see it being something really cool in like a Tomb Raider kind of thing, where like the bow is absolutely. Horizon's the big one. Yeah, it'll be a little bit more integrated. So
yeah, nice.
It is. It's neat.
All right, so we'll move along. So for anyone that doesn't know, we each pick a different PS Plus selection every month to try out and give our impressions on. So we did the PS4 selections for this month, November 2020. I chose to play Hollow Knight. Kate chose Shadow of War, which is the Lord of the Rings game. So let me tell you a bit about Hollow Knight first, Kate. And I know for those that don't know, Kate, like you're the Hollow Knight 112%? 112%,
that's right.
So yeah, this is my first time playing Hollow Knight. And I think it's really good. I don't really have any big complaints with it, although I will say it's definitely, I think it's one of those games that's been built up a little bit more in my head than I was expecting, just because I know yourself and a few other people that are like Hollow Knight truthers, like this is the experience, you know. And to myself,
this is
like,
your god now.
Yeah, I've taken out I think 3 or 4 bosses. I've got I think 4 of the major areas opened up on my map now. Yeah, I think 4, but I'm really enjoying it from what I've played. But I will say that off the top that I do prefer, when it comes to these Metroidvanias, I think I prefer like the more Ori feeling ones that are more platform focused instead of the combat. It's maybe just the balance is a little bit more towards combat in Hollow Knight than I would personally choose. But I'm liking it a lot so far. And one of my favorite things I've noticed about it is it just teaches you how to play so organically in terms of, you know, you start off facing these really generic, easy to fight enemies, like these little bugs, and then eventually you'll run into a bigger bug that shoots some of the smaller bugs. So you begin to notice, like, okay, when I see that guy, he's gonna, spit out some babies. And then later on, there's one of the first bosses I ran into was the Gruz, right? That's his name, the big caterpillar type thing, and he ends up exploding after you beat him. And because you've seen kind of like these mechanics before and the way that it's animated, you begin to expect it. And he like lays babies at the end, and it was one of those things where, like, I knew it was going to happen, even though I've never seen this enemy before. And I always think that's such a good way that games can teach you what to expect.
It's a very well like cohesively designed world. Like, it's kind of like you start to understand it, not just in terms of like, I learned of like the video game would have this, or like, but in terms of like how the logic actually works in that world itself. Yeah,
100%. And it's the same thing. Like, I moved on to another area. One of the basic areas, Green Path, and it's the same thing with these exploding enemies that teaches you, like, hey, these guys explode and it's going to hurt you if you die. If you stand next to them. You
also,
if you stand next to them, it's going to hurt you if you die for sure. But anyway, I like the combat. I like this system kind of having to equip your different badges for different abilities. I found some pretty cool ones so far, like the one that's a thorn, where if you take damage, it'll hurt the person that hits you, and like one that halves my damage. But I gotta say, like, another thing that's really kind of bothering me at this point is how the map is attached to your badge points. Because to me, I like to know where I am, and one of the biggest problems with these Metroidvania games for me is when I lose where I'm going, because I'm not really someone that likes to, unless I'm like searching around intentionally to find secrets. Like, I don't like to not know where I'm going in really any game, and so the fact that if I don't use my points to equip not only where I am on the map but also the map itself, then it's very easy to get lost in it when I'm exploring an area. And it's not like it's fun to use those abilities, but by using my points on the map, I don't get to use as many interactive kind of skills, and that's really kind of bumming me out. I don't know if you feel the same way about that. I mean, for you it's different because you probably know the map so easily, right?
Well, I used the map badge the entire way through because I agree. I like to know where I was. Like, I like exploring and I, like traversing the unknown, but I like to know where I am and kind of having a context too. So I had those. And that was my actual one complaint when I first played the game too, was like, I feel like I have to waste badge slots for like the map and like things that I should just have. But as you go, you get a lot more like slots and you kind of still do end up with like tons of good customization options. So as I got later in the game, I didn't actually feel like I was missing out on having other things because I was using the badge. And then it kind of flipped into the sense of feeling like, they kind of like, they expect that you're going to use that for the badge. And so like, it almost kind of seems it's there more in the sense of like, if you're playing it through the second time, you unequip the badge for like the map and stuff and you put on something else as like a bonus.
Okay.
So as you get a little bit further, I think that stuff kind of like it starts to feel better and it kind of flips to that perspective. But definitely I agree, early on it sort of feels like, I'm like almost being punished for like wanting to have my map.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think like it's kind of like intentional.
Okay, good.
But I know exactly what you mean because I had the exact same thought when I first played.
Good, yeah. I'm glad to hear that because that is definitely like the thing that's turned me off the most. Because I am otherwise enjoying like the combat's fun. I like the kind of chunkiness of the hits. I've had a couple boss fights with I'm assuming it's one of the main characters, the girl with the longer weapon.
Hornet.
Hornet, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple good
Who
fights
actually,
with her.
Cool detail for her, she's actually the playable character in the second game coming out.
And I thought she was. Yeah, I thought she was. I just wasn't 100% sure, but it was cool to fight her. I like the pattern memorization. It feels like very doable, and I feel like I have the skill to do it. So I haven't gotten too stuck in terms of like a boss fight yet. I've actually beaten a couple on my first try and whatever. Hey, look at me go.
Nice.
It's more so just like knowing where to go and that kind of thing. But I like how you got the pogo mechanic. You can like slash down whereas to jump off of certain things.
The pogo is very good.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying it. I wish I had been able to play more up until now, but let's be honest, since I got the PS5, I've been kind of off the older stuff. I'm sure once I get through Astro and Miles and whatnot, I'll probably continue to push on, because I'd like to beat it, or at very least get a bit further and see. There's a lot of cryptic stuff in there, like items you can buy that I have no idea. Like, oh, you can buy a key. Like, what does this open? I don't know. You can buy a rancid egg. Do I need to buy this? I don't know. Maybe. Like, I just want to get these items and kind of check them out. And,
sure sounds nice.
And see. Yeah, I mean, I want to see what everything does, right? And kind of get into the lore.
I'm sure the lure of buying a rancid egg will be enough to keep you going. But if that's not quite enough for some weird reason, I will say, like, I think you're on the cusp of like just getting some like big upgrades in terms of like movement. Yeah,
I just got the air dash and a wall jump. So those two things I feel really upgraded my ability to get around. And I'm hoping it only continues to feel that way, because I think, like I said, the more and more traversal and speed I can build up in platforming options, I feel like I'll begin to like it even that much more, and maybe it will end up being one of my more favorite games in this kind of genre.
I think so. I think that's definitely one of the things about Hollow Knight is that I think it's great all the way through, but it does start off like a little bit limited in terms of like your movement options, but you get a lot of upgrades that really like change how the game feels to play, and you're kind of right on the border of like a kind of like just getting into that second phase where all of a sudden like the game is opened up a lot for you. So
nice. Okay, good.
I'm so excited to see
you've re-inspired
how you go.
me. Maybe I'll play some more and let you know.
Good.
But why don't you
don't buy the rancid egg though.
Why don't you tell me about your PS Plus game?
Well, unfortunately, my PS Plus game was not quite as positive as yours. I played Shadow of War, and despite really wanting to like a game in Tolkien's fantasy setting, I just can't say that I like this game at all. You know, I made some notes for this game, and I came at it from the sense of like, it's just not for me, and that's fine. And if you like it, I'm happy for you, and it's not a bad game. But the more I've kind of thought about it, I'm like, it might be a good game once you get a little bit of the ways in, but the first 2 hours suck. And like, it's not good at the start of the game. I think this game and Shadow of Mordor that came before it were known very much for their Nemesis system. That system they have where like you fight the different like orc chieftains and captains, and
they kind of hold grudges against you and move positions.
Yeah, exactly. And like when you kind of take one out, like another one will take its position, and they all have like slightly different personalities, and they hold grudges against you, and they kind of like
they can get into fights with each other as well.
Yeah, and they have like inner conflict. So it's this whole kind of like organic like orc chief system that sort of like works independently, but also like changes as you interact with it. And that's what got like really popular and notable about the first game, was that people were really like interested in this new and like kind of like creative system, and it made people make like kind of narrative stories for themselves about these different orcs that were sort of like vying to be like their big nemesis. And so that part's kind of cool. And they've changed, they've added some things in the second game to give a little bit more, like they've gone out and like given you even some like either sillier or wackier designs for the orcs. Like there's a bard one for example that's like silly because he's an orc, but he's also a bard, and he like sings when you first run into him and whatever. And so they put a lot into that system, and it's really interesting. But I think the problem I find is like the game kind of like tries to push you into just doing the Nemesis system more than it actually encourages you to play like the main story missions. And it almost feels like they know that that's the big selling point for the game. So they're like, okay, but like please go play in the Nemesis system. Like don't worry about the rest of the story. Like, yeah, okay, that we didn't put the most work into that. It's kind of shit, but like go play with the Nemesis system, have fun. Dinner will be ready in an hour. Like it almost kind of feels like they're sort of like aware that that's what's driving the game.
That's too bad. So you get the feeling like they had this really cool system that people liked, and they were like, well, I guess we'll write another story so we can do another one of these and expand on that system because it needs something to be happening.
Exactly. And that might be disingenuous. I've only played 2 hours, and like I haven't played the first one, so like I'm sure there's a lot of like continuation on from that. You get a really big exposition story dump from the first game that it picks right up from where that ended. But to me,
I mean, I played the first one, and it was it was fine, but I wouldn't have said it was like
Yeah.
a standout game or anything. So
Yeah,
that's-
and like
yeah, I'm not surprised to hear you're kind of lukewarm on it.
the story for the first 2 hours as well is like it's very tropey. They've obviously changed a lot from the actual like lore of Tolkien's world, which I think is fine. Like I don't think it has to be like, well, in the books actually this happens, so like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like not gonna be one of those. It's fine to change things. It's cool to see like
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. Like it's cool to see worlds that you're familiar with and characters you love like reimagined in a new way and kind of like a parallel universe of like what could have happened. Like I always think that's really cool, but to me it's just kind of like it's just really basic tropey stuff that isn't interesting. Like this isn't it happens right at the beginning of the game, so it's not a spoiler, but it just made me like face palm so hard at the very start of the game. You make another ring of power because like sure, why not have a second one, and then you lose it and you lose it immediately because like of course, like how could you just you can't have that's too good.
How could you possibly have kept it?
Yeah, like that's too good. So you lose it, and then like Shelob comes and hangs out, and if you remember Shelob, she's a giant spider monster, and that's it.
I don't remember.
Oh, well,
okay.
yeah, I don't know. I'm sure arachnophobes remember, like, Shelob was, like, the giant spider in that universe, and she's really scary, and like, she's just a big-ass spider. But in this game, instead of just being a big spider, she's also a sexy woman who helps you for no reason. Like, just because it's like,
of course she is,
oh, she's a spider, but she's really actually a sexy lady, and it's like, okay, like, sure, like, it's just really, like, kind of seems like they didn't put, you know, the resources into that, and then... Yeah, it's not my kind of thing, I think. I think it looks maybe like it could get cool later. There's a lot of like build path and like cool like cinematic visual abilities you can get for the combat, but you start out with nothing and it's just sort of bland.
What a bummer. Wow. Hey, at least you got a bunch of other cool stuff to play on your PS5
exactly.
now,
so I'm sitting down, I'm like, am I gonna play Demon Souls or am I gonna play this? And it's like, wow.
I don't know. Oh, wow.
But if you like Shadow of
choice.
War, you go for it, and like, you know, maybe you get to kiss Shelob at the end if you win. I don't know.
Ooh, jeez. Okay, what do you say we take a quick break and we come back afterwards to talk about our PlayStation 5 predictions and see how smart we were with those. We'll do that. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back to the show for the second part of our episode today, which is going to be looking over the predictions we made for the PlayStation 5 and its launch. And we did these predictions back in May on our 4th ever episode of the show, so they've been around for quite a while. And to be honest with you, Kate, I don't actually remember what our predictions were. So you had the great task of going back and going over those, so I can't wait to hear what we predicted. And I think we've agreed that we are going to keep score of, it's a full point if we've predicted something correctly, and a half point if we were partially correct, and we'll maybe debate those if we need to. But yeah, whenever you're ready.
All right, well, I will say it starts off, we are eerily accurate with a few, and then it just devolves into absolute chaos. So we went kind of back and forth with our reveals, so I'm just going to kind of go in the same format. I don't know, maybe you pause to go back and listen to that episode, which would be really fantastic. But if you didn't, here's some spoilers for episode 4. So my first prediction, and I think as well too, like it wasn't just for launch, so some of these are still like, you know, potentially like for kind
still
of
pending,
like pending
yeah,
for future. But my first prediction was, I said, and I think I even mentioned like this is a pretty safe prediction, there were going to be lots of remakes and remasters coming out. That was just kind of a trend that we had just been seeing a lot of at the beginning of 2020, and it has definitely held true. But in my amazing moment of clarity, I specified specifically that I thought the Persona series would get either like a port or like a remaster collection because of the success of 5, and we did get Persona 4 Royal come to Steam. And I also said...
That's true.
I also said the other franchise...
Persona 4 Golden.
Yeah, Golden, sorry. Royal is 5. So yeah, Golden came to Steam. And the other thing I said was I thought we would see a revival of Ratchet and Clank. And we, of course,
what a
have
prediction.
Rift Apart. So I think I get a point for that one.
That's a full point.
I think that's
for
a
sure.
full point. That's pretty good.
There's no doubt. Well, we also had the remake of Demon's Souls, and I mean, that was, I mean, kind of obvious we're going to get a remake, but compounding factors, I think that's
yeah,
a point
I think
for
it's a half point kind of for throwing out the name Persona and throwing out Ratchet and Clank. And I was like, hey, my big brain play worked out.
Yeah, okay.
But
What's the
not
next
to
one?
be outdone, you came back and fired saying that you thought the PlayStation 5 reveal would be June 17th.
Okay.
You were close. It was June 11th. Looking
wow,
back
that's
on
actually
it,
really
you were
close.
very close. Now, as a caveat, it was originally going to be the 4th, and then it got postponed, if you remember, to the 11th.
Right.
But you also said that you thought the price would be $4.99 US, which is exactly the price of the disc edition for PS5.
Wow, look at that. Again, I think that was a pretty low-hanging fruit
Yeah.
answer, just because, I mean, people talk about that. It was kind of like almost common knowledge at a certain point, but I mean, back in May, it might not
Back
have
in
been.
May,
So
and the
give me
other
that
thing too
point.
is like the date you were ended up being really close on the date too, like 6 days off. Like that's less than a week. That's pretty good. But the other thing you did say on that is you also thought it would come with a year of PlayStation Now, which I don't know about you, but I've yet to receive my free year of PlayStation Now.
It's really strange, Kate. I've not received mine yet either. I don't exactly know why.
Super weird.
I'm gonna be in touch with Sony, but maybe that's looking like a half point for me, because I feel like it's not fair if you can spit out a bunch of predictions. Like, you got to have it entirely right to get a full point, I think.
Okay.
So I should have left the PS Now thing off the board.
Right, that might be what drags you down. But okay, sure, we'll give you a half point for everyone keeping score. So
right now, what is it? Half point?
well, I think
do you have one?
I got a full point. I thought we said
I think you did get a
Okay.
full point. Yeah. So it's 1 to
1 to
0.5.
0.5. Wonderful. Well, keep it rolling. My second prediction was that we would get the reveal by July. But because now listening back to the episode, because mine was vague and yours was specific, we decided we'd do like, it's not like Jeopardy, but whatever that game shows, the Price is Right rules, where if it was
right. Price is
you know,
Right,
who
yeah.
went over, but I think yours was so close that my by July is kind of forfeit.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be out. Yeah.
And I
mean, July, that wasn't right anyways.
Yeah.
So. Or by July.
by
That's
July.
kind of,
So
yeah.
yeah. But I mean that
Yeah.
was pretty vague and like super safe. And the other thing I said that
boo.
it would come with a limited edition for a big first party exclusive. And the exclusive I guessed for that was Horizon. So, I mean Horizon
and that's not even coming out
Forbidden
yet.
West
Wow.
is like the biggest like sequel we're getting to the first party.
Yeah, but it's not even coming out yet. You're talking there's going to be an exclusive console? Or
Yeah,
what?
yeah. I thought
Or, like,
it
it's
would,
gonna
it would
come out
come
with an
out.
exclusive
It would
game.
come out like with like a console like edition where you get like the Horizon console and it would have like symbol on it or something.
Oh, yeah. No.
So that
no.
unfortunately
No.
was a big no.
Okay, what's my second one?
Your second one is awesome. Your second one was, and this was at the reveal event, which you specified again would be on the 17th. There would be a God of War trailer, but no gameplay, just a trailer that would then say 2021 on it. Which
Wow, I am so
is
good.
amazing. So you got the date wrong because we got that God of War trailer, but it wasn't at the reveal on the 17th. It was later in like the games showcase one.
Yeah, right.
So you got that aspect wrong, but like you nailed the entire like actual God of War like presentation.
I would like to argue that that's close enough for a point.
I want to give you a point for it because it was almost eerie to listen to. Like it was cool. It was
All right.
amazing. So
I don't even care if the rest of my predictions are complete shit and didn't even come close to true, because that's really good.
yes, that was good.
I'm proud. I'm patting myself on the back. You guys can't
Yeah,
see it right now, but I
He is.
am.
He physically is. So yeah, I say 100% you get a point for that. That was badass.
Okay, so now it's 1.5 for me, 1 for you.
My
Okay.
next one has not yet come true, but I'm still holding out hope at home here. I said we'd get a new music style game, because they talk so much about like the surround sound and like the sound of the controller, and
Yeah.
they kind of like talked a lot about like the audio quality of the console. So I said we get a sound style game. And when you asked me what kind of game, like Guitar Hero or whatever, I said I thought it was going to be, and I was hoping it would be like Elite Beat Agents, if you remember.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So I think that's 0 points. We don't have Elite Beat agents coming out yet.
Sadly. Sadly.
But that doesn't mean that it might not come in the near future, and we can hold out hope.
That just means what's our... Yeah, I guess for this exact circumstance, it's wrong, but it may be... I'm sure it'll be true eventually.
Yeah, we can do like a third and final follow-up eventually, but that's so far not a point. Your third prediction was you thought because of the new create button being on the controller and all the like implementation of like making it easy to take videos and upload those and streaming and things, that you thought Dreams would be free to play with a PS Plus subscription.
Oh,
so
God.
I think maybe that might be coming later with our PlayStation Now, because I also haven't received that.
Oh man, you know what? That idea makes so much sense that maybe I'm just too smart. I don't know.
I think so. It was too smart of a marketing idea that they just couldn't take the loss.
It's too bad, yeah.
So
okay,
moving on. This next one is kind of cheap as well. I think I said we're gonna get a lot of games with like season passes and content passes.
I mean,
yeah, super obvious.
That's basically like we're gonna get controllers with our PlayStation.
Guys, it's gonna have a cord to plug into your TV.
I mean, yeah. Here's the thing. Technically, you get a full point for that, but
it's rough. But I also did say that I thought we would get an exclusive MMO.
Which we have not, right?
Not. Like, I compared it to, like, a Destiny kind of thing and, like, those sort of games.
Yeah.
And I thought there would be, like, a unique one that would come out for PlayStation as sort of, like, a, you know, like, a social thing and, like, kind of, like...
I mean, Godfall has some of those characteristics.
Yeah, Godfall is kind of, like, it's a loot, melee loot game.
It's like a loot brawler,
A loot brawler, yeah, I think is what they've sort of...
I don't know if that counts as an MMO. Maybe you can get a half point for
not
Godfall,
an MMO.
But is that exclusive too? I think it is.
Yeah, Godfall is exclusive, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it depends. I'll leave it up to you. Do you define Godfall as an MMO?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, it's up to you. I feel like that's a no.
Yeah, I feel like it's a no. And then the season pass thing, I feel amoral taking points for that because like it's the dumbest thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you should get a half point because you're not wrong about the season's pass, but I think it should be a warning that hey, next time you gotta pick something.
Okay, we'll do this. I'll take the half point, but with the caveat that if we tie at the end, you win.
Gotcha. Okay, deal.
Which I think we will because from here on out we really suck. So your number 4 was that Blue Point. There were heavy rumors at the time that Blue Point was working on a little known game called Demon Souls. And that wasn't yet confirmed, but everyone knew that Blue Point was working on some kind of remaster and was with Sony, and everyone suspected it was Demon Souls. And you said, it's not Demon Souls, this is a red herring, who wants to play that game, it sucks. And it's actually going to be...
I don't think I said that.
No, you didn't say that. You didn't say that. But what you did say was that instead of Demon Souls, it was secretly going to turn out to be Siphon Filter.
That would have been so cool.
Which would have been cool.
But then Demon Souls is cool anyway.
But it clearly was not. And it was indeed Demon Souls.
There you go. Well, you know what? Sometimes you just throw those kind of predictions and try to be cool. And sometimes you're not cool. So I'm wrong.
Sometimes it just sucks to suck. But here we are. My final prediction, which I think is still coming. I'm gonna hold on to this one, but it's just too soon, is that we are gonna be getting a PlayStation Cinematic Universe. And
I remember that prediction.
It was because the opening to like the PlayStation games now, it's got that very like Marvel quality to it. In the little like cinematic they play. But I'd also said, and I had decent evidence for this. I'd done my research because we were getting that Uncharted movie. Castlevania is obviously like a big popular show that's done well on Netflix. Last of Us is getting a TV show supposedly. Resident Evil is also supposedly getting a TV show. So I'm thinking you put all these elements together and then sooner or later you have your own cinematic universe.
I mean, I see the sentiment. I understand where you're coming from. I just feel like we need a few of those shows to actually come out first.
Yes.
And to be good before they maybe expand to the universe.
I agree. I think my issue was in my timeline, not in my like it's 100% happening. But it's just, maybe it's a 25 kind of thing, not a 2020.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll see.
And you're
I got one more prediction.
You got one
right?
more. So far, you're not right, but you never know. You predicted that Horizon 2 is going to come out, and it will have a battle royale aspect to it. An online multiplayer battle royale. And to be fair, it kind of would be cool. It's like a good setting for like a battle royale and like,
yeah,
like that kind of universe.
I'd stand by that. That would be cool.
Stand by
Maybe
it would
I would
be
buy
cool.
it.
But so far
Jeez. So what's the final score here? These are painful.
These are indeed not great. I think I got 1.5 points, and I think you also got 1.5 points.
Right, which means that I'm the winner because your half point was worth slightly less.
Because my half point was bad.
That's great. Well, whenever we need to pick a PS Plus game now, and we want the same one, maybe this is the tiebreaker where I get to pick before you.
I'll never get to play Hollow Knight.
We'll see. Well, because Kate, you said Hollow Knight, I think it's time to end the segment, and instead finish the show with some listener mail. Hello, Crosses and Triangles. Long-time listener, first time writing in a question. Femshep or Maleshep? Which do you think gives a better experience for you personally, and which voice actor do you think did a better job? Would love to hear your thoughts. Cheers, Jeffy for Prime Minister 69. So thank you for your question, Jeffy. And Kate, would you like to go first?
I would love to go first. I really appreciate this question. I think it's great. I played probably the first half of the first Mass Effect. And that's my experience with the series. I played Femshep because I typically, in those kind of games, make myself. I thought she was great. I went back on YouTube because it had been a while since I played it. I went back on YouTube and just watched kind of the same scene through both characters. And I actually think that while they're both good, I think Femshep did the better recording. I think the voice actor was fantastic, and you'll have to read her names. I know you grabbed them, but she has a lot of qualities, and like she reminded me a lot of that famous actor who like is an alien. Yeah,
it's Jennifer Hale.
Jennifer Hale, yeah.
And the male shepherd is Mark Meer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're both good, but I think I would give the edge to Femshep.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I've played all the Mass Effects.
Mm-hmm.
I've not played the first one, actually. Let me take that back, because I had it on PlayStation at the time, and Mass Effect 1 was a exclusive to Xbox.
Right. Oh, that's
what
right.
What a day to be alive that was.
Yeah, weird.
Wow. But anyway, so, I mean, for me, it was an interesting question because I feel as though Shepard is one of the least interesting characters in Mass Effect.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like all the supporting cast, that's the ones I feel had the stronger voice performances. And I always found Shepard to be a little bit awkward and maybe have some weird inflections in certain conversations. And I think that's maybe the nature of those kind of choose your own branching narrative story games sometimes.
Well, especially because it was kind of like so early on and like that kind of becoming like a big gameplay staple.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of times too where you'd click something and you'd be like, I want to answer the like kind of like sassy answer, but you click on it, it's like, oh no, that was just rude. Like, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to come across like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I played as a male shepherd when I played my playthrough. And it's funny because I've actually gotten into recently, maybe the last couple of years, I actually pick a lot of the female characters now. I don't really know why it is. I've just kind of grown to like some of the designs more, I guess. And to be honest, like I know it's such a unbalanced percentage of games you play as a male protagonist, so I often choose the female now whenever I get a choice.
Just some little variety.
But I did play. Yeah, I did play the guy in Mass Effect, and I think he was fine, but I mean, from everything I've looked up online and seen in videos and stuff, and just public opinion seems to be that Jennifer Hale did a better job with the female Shepard. So I know there's the Mass Effect remaster coming out next year, so I'll probably end up picking that up for my PS5, and I'm definitely planning to do female Shepard on my next playthrough, just to try it out, change it up, be a bit different, and I think overall, like you said, maybe a better performance.
Yeah, I don't think it really changes much, like actual, like in terms of like the story or the gameplay or whatnot, but I just think like she did a really good job. What's interesting is that like she's kind of considered to be like the better option in that aspect, but I still feel like the game is very much designed around like male shepherd, and then you have female just as another option. Because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like,
yeah.
you get like all your crew, and it's like, which sexy alien would you like to date as male shepherd? Whereas like as the girl, it's like, well, all right, Garrus, like I don't know how this is gonna work.
or like,
You're kind of a
yeah,
monster.
no, they're like a lot more, less humanoid. It's so true.
But like, yeah, I dated Garrus anyway. I'm not gonna say I didn't. I did, obviously.
Fair enough. All right, well, I think that's going to close us out for the show today. Kate, thank you as always for joining me. And thank everyone who listened to the show. Again, you can find us over on Twitter is the best place at CANDS pod. We've got a link tree up over there that you can find the link to everywhere else we post our content and share stuff with you guys. As well, if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, it'll help us grow the show, find new audience, and we would very much appreciate that. The link will be, again, over on the link tree on Twitter. So thank you all again for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time to chat about some more PlayStation 5 games, news, and more. The intro and outro music for Circles and Squares was produced by friend of the show, Matthew Chan. Interlude music is from Scott Gratton of the Free Music Archive. Our channel art was created by @unreasonable on Twitter, and our brother Alex is the designer of the Circles and Squares logo. Thank you all for listening and supporting the show.